Knight move.
Shit. Oh, my rook. What am I doing?
The rook! The bishop! The queen!
Hello and welcome back to episode 6 of the Road to 2000 series. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about some strategy, namely trades and exchanges. So, a few things to remind you. First of all, there are basics, like the piece worth. Pawns being worth 1 point, knights and bishops being worth 3 points, rooks being 5 points, queens being 9 points, and the king being worth the game. This can also be found on a chart on screen. So, this is just the basics of trading. Hence, here, trading bishop for knight is a fine trade. It's 3 for 3, so it's an equal trade. Neither of us benefit. However, if you check the valuation bar, it went from plus 0.9 for white down to minus 0.2, which means it went from white being clearly better to white being a bit worse. But how is this possible? It's a 3 for 3 trade. It should be neutral. This is because pieces have value other than their set values. This is due to the fact that some pieces are more active than others. Some pieces are doing other things relative to other pieces. So let's look at this trade objectively. So when we take the knight, we're giving up our bishop, which was currently pinning the knight, being a pretty strong piece. And as we learned, we should put pressure on the pin piece when we have a pin like this. Meaning here trading doesn't really make sense because we get rid of the pin for our opponent, which helps them out. Or we could have used the pin and the fact that the knight is stuck to take advantage, giving us a clear advantage. So in this case, trading isn't good because it would give up our strong bishop, pinning the knight to the queen, in exchange for a knight that's just stuck. So it's not doing anything. Hence the bishop has more value than the knight, even though they start out the game with an equivalent value. Also, there are other things to consider. Generally, trading bishops for knights isn't the best way to go about things because knights have less range and typically they're useful in closed positions. However, most positions are semi-open or open. Hence, more of the time than not, you need a good reason to trade a bishop for a knight, but you don't need a great reason to trade a knight for a bishop. So for example, if black wanted to attack white's bishop here, it would make sense because it would appear that there isn't a good reason not to. However, it would drop this pawn. Hence, white would get some value from it. But what would happen if, for example, black first defends, white just castles? Now, the best move is to attack this bishop because there's no reason that trading a knight for a bishop when the bishop is strong isn't good. So this is the basics of trading. You want to trade your weaker pieces for your opponent's stronger pieces. Now I'll be moving into some examples of exchanges, and I'll be asking the question of whether we should trade pieces or if we should play something else. So in the following position, should black play bishop takes f3? Pause the video and I'll give the answer in a few seconds. If you said that black should not trade by moving the bishop back to h5 or f5, you're sadly incorrect. Although in the previous example, it made sense to not trade by typically pulling the bishop back. Here there are a lot of factors which disincentivize this. First of all, if we bring the bishop back, we're not really able to play knight to f5 to pressure on the d4 pawn due to fear of g4 ideas. Furthermore, if we trade, we're removing one of the key defenders of this d4 pawn, allowing us to quickly attack it with moves like knight f5 and queen b6, giving us good pressure in exchange for the bishop pair. So here, although we're trading an equal knight for bishop, we're trading a good defender for our bishop. And our bishop also isn't particularly good. It's blocked a lot by this pawn structure, and typically in Caro-Kann structures, it's not a piece you want. So in this case, it made a lot of sense to trade. However, there are other cases where it doesn't make sense. So overall, when you're assessing trades like this one, you have to think about it case by case. There's not really a set rule of whether you should trade. You have to assess your piece activity, the opponent's piece activity, but also you have to assess the quality of the position after. As Fischer famously said, it doesn't matter what left the board, it only matters what's on the board. In this case, it doesn't matter that we're leaving our bishop behind for a knight, only that matters is that there's not really great support for this d4 pawn, and black claims a slight advantage after moves like knight f5 or queen b6. Now, when it comes down to trading, the biggest factor for success is experience. As you keep playing games online and improve, you'll notice which trades are good for you and which trades are not so good. So, by checking things like the evaluation after a trade or before the trade, you can evaluate yourself whether a trade was good. So going back to the previous example with this bishop to h5, you can see that it's clearly better for black if we trade, but not good if we don't trade. You can then start to piece it together as to why this trade was so good.